everyone. My name is Dr. Karen Schwean-Lardner. I work at the Department of Animal and Poultry Sciences at the University of Saskatchewan. I'd like to thank you for listening today to hear a little bit about our group, which is the Poultry Management and Welfare Group in the U of S. Before I talk about what we do, I wanted to give just a quick view of what our university facilities look like, because they really drive some of the direction of the research that we do. Our campus buildings are right on our campus, and we have a number of different units. One of them is our floor barn, which has 9 individual environmentally controllable rooms where we can change things like light wavelength or light intensity or temperature or ventilation, all of those things. If we were to put broilers in there, each one of those rooms can hold upwards of about 1,000 broilers. So they're really like little mini barns that we can use in a lot of environmental work. We also have a hen facility, which houses about 6,000 laying hens, a small pen facility, and a commercial hatchery. And again, we are right on the university campus. So what do? I started my role here on faculty about 7 years ago. And if I looked at my letter of hire, I started off that way, but it's ventured just a little bit. My letter says you should do these things. One of them is teaching. And I am heavily involved in the undergraduate teaching program, both in the College of Agriculture and Western College of Veterinary Medicine, as well as a graduate program within our own college. In terms of administration, I am just finishing my term as an assistant department head in my department, but I also chair a section of the animal care for the entire campus. My letter of hire says you should have a small involvement in poultry extension, and mine is much larger than that. This is something that I have a complete passion for, and my graduate students will find that that is something that they are going to be doing in their tenure with me as well. And finding my research, and that's what I really want to talk with you about today, so you'll understand some of the directions that we take in our work. So when I talk about research, this statement lives in the back of my mind, and it says that all animals deserve a good life. And this really drives the work that we do. And so what we do is study the relationship between management programs, or maybe feeding programs, depending on what we're doing, and poultry welfare. But we also include production as well, because this whole concept and this whole big picture is so important for producers and consumers and the general public. Our work focuses on turkeys, laying hens, and broilers. This is not my group, this is our group, and I would love to introduce you to my research assistants, Tori on the left and Kaylin on the right, who I would not be able to do anything without. So they are a huge part of our U of S team. We are just in the process of signing documents for another postdoc to come into our group. It's not all finished yet, so I can't introduce you to her yet, but we're hoping she's on board with us by Christmas or January of next year. We also have the ability to work with a really big group of other scientists throughout our university. So whether they're in our department, Western College of Veterinary Medicine, for example, College of Engineering, Health Sciences, Psychology, Biology, the Synchrotron, Vito, a number of other places as well. So we have a wide spectrum of people that we can draw from in our work at the U of S. I also go outside of that, as most universities do, and I have a number of projects that I've worked with University of Guelph, particularly Tina Wodowski's team. She's brought McGill into that as well, so we have some things in common with them as well. Bruce Rathgaber at Dalhousie University, University of Arkansas, to name some of the more current projects that we have going. So that's a little bit about what my team is and who they are, but I'd like to introduce you to what we do, what some of the students are, who are some of the past students, and where they've ended up with. What careers have they chosen after they've done their graduate program with. So let's start out with turkeys. Turkeys are so interesting. They are big. They can be difficult. They are expensive to raise. They take different equipment, all of those things, but we love working with turkeys. And so we've had a number of projects over the last 7 years. The first one is Samia's project, where she's looked at stocking density, of turkey hens. This is in progress. She's hoping to defend by the end of July. And so I won't tell you very much about that data just yet. Kaylin did her master's with me as well, and she looked at the stocking density of turkey toms and found some really cool things. When we look at productivity of individual birds or welfare of a flock in general, high densities are trouble. They cause some problems. But what's really interesting is very low densities also cause some issues in terms of welfare of birds. And that's new, I think. We have many phone calls from producers, much like the other scientists will as well. And one of them called us a little while ago saying, my poults are spending a lot of time eating wood chips. What are we going to do? So our group, led by Samia, did a project for fun to try and come up with ways to attract poults to feeders. It was really visiting some very old research, but it was great fun to do that. Things are changing in terms of the turkeys and things like infrared beak treatment. And some countries, Germany in particular, is in the process or has banned infrared beak treatment for all commercial turkeys on the basis that this is a painful event. So we did a study, a couple of studies actually, to look at this. We're not sure this is painful, but those two papers are under review, and hopefully you'll have a chance to read them in the near future. Currently, we're housing pullets for our laying hen flock, and so we had the opportunity this year and next year to do a couple of experiments in conjunction with Egg Farmers of Canada and Egg Farmers of Alberta. Adele is looking at the first one, and she's trying to determine how much space, perch space, pullets require when they're reared on floors. So we're getting them prepped and ready for moving into more extensive housing systems. Perches are requirements there. How much space does the pullet really need? Samantha's working on a very interesting project. Many people, when they use LED lights, have a flicker, so on, off, on, off, on, off, occurring in their LED lights. And Samantha's looking at the effect of this flicker on the production and welfare of leghorn pullets. This has been an interesting project because it's much more complex than we originally thought, developing the flicker systems, but we have a really great relationship with a lighting company out of Europe that's helped us to devise these systems. We've worked with them in the past in some of our wavelength data, and they've come up with a system where we can actually adjust the flicker in each of those 9 rooms that I talked about before. A project that we're getting very close to starting is looking at hatchery welfare for pullets. This is going to be Samia's project, which she'll start in September 2021. And again, this is a heavily funded by Canadian industry. We also involved MyTax funding in this. So Samia will have a really cool opportunity to go spend some time working at a commercial hatchery in Manitoba, learning the process from the time the eggs come in until the time the chicks go out. So she'll spend some time there on a commercial breeding farm and also at Novatech Engineering in the US. So very cool project, and we're excited to get started with that. We've done a number of projects in the past. Sarah has worked with beak treatment on leghorns, and she's looked at different beak shapes. Sarah is currently a PhD student at the University of Edinburgh. Carly and Samantha have worked on transportation for egg production hens, either end-of-lay hens or egg production pullets, which really is not represented very well in the literature. So some very cool work coming from both of those. Carly now works for Egg Farmers of Alberta, and Samantha's working in Ontario for Maple Leaf Foods. Selma Santos worked with us, and as well as Bruce Rathgeber, on looking at incubation lighting systems and how they affect egg production pullets. And so Selma got to travel to Truro, Nova Scotia to spend some time collecting data on an experiment there, then came back, did that analysis, and also did some work with some small incubators and looking at day length at our facility at University of Saskatchewan. Selma is currently managing a broiler breeder facility in Saskatchewan. Joanne has just finished recently as well, and she looked at light intensity for pullets that are reared in floor systems. So using a range from 10 to 50 lux, can birds manipulate upward to perches, or do they crash? All of those kinds of things. And so that one was in conjunction with Tina Wadowski. Joanne is currently our interim manager at our poultry and teaching research at the U of S. For broilers, traditionally, University of Saskatchewan has done a lot of lighting work, and that continues still. So Bruna is working on her PhD. She's looking at wavelength and broiler production and broiler welfare. Bruna is currently on maternity leave, but will be back this fall and hopefully finish up by early next year. What's really neat with this project is that Bruna used blue lights and green lights and white lights. What's different than some of the published literature, however, is that we use specialized equipment to measure light intensity. You cannot use a lux meter to measure light intensity for blue light, for example, and white light. It gives incorrect values. So using specialized equipment, Bruno was actually able to standardize the light intensity. That's really neat because in many of the literature that's already published, they talk about amazing increases in body weight gains, for example, those types of things. But when we remove that effect of intensity, Bruna's data doesn't show those examples. So interesting project. Tori, who you met on an earlier slide, worked on the effect of day length on gastrointestinal transit time. Really what we were interested in is what happens to the gut if we give birds 10 hours of darkness. Does it sit empty for 8 or 9 hours, which could result in some negative problems? And what Tori found was that no, it doesn't. If the broilers know when nighttime comes, they eat enough and they slow down that transition time. They eat enough and keep feed in the gut, and so it empties at the same time as long as birds that have 1 hour of darkness, for example. So it's important, though, that they know when a standardized nighttime is. How fun. Then we also do some other projects for interest's sake when we have a time. For example, some work that we've done on ultraviolet light and broiler production and bird welfare. Other work that we've done on broilers includes looking at the extent of starch digestion in broilers and hens, both on productivity and on bird welfare. And Eugenia did this work. I co-supervised Eugenia in conjunction with Dr. Hank Clausen. So Eugenia now works for Egg Farmers of Canada. Bethany Baker-Cook worked on evaluating euthanasia techniques for broilers. And this experiment was in conjunction again with Tina Wadowski's team from Guelph. We did the broiler component. And so Bethany now, well, once borders are opened and she can actually leave the country, will be starting her role as an assistant professor at Auburn University. And finally, some feed issues or feed things that we've looked at are using mealworms to consume contaminated wheat products with things like Dawn, and then using that product as broiler feed ingredients. And Sean did this work. This also gives me an opportunity to point out that we are looking for students. So we just heard that we received funding for looking at nutritional strategies for heat stress in broilers, their effect on both productivity and bird welfare. And that's a really interesting part for me because it's not something that's been well studied. For this experiment, we're working very closely with Evonik nutritionists and their immunology group. And so it'll be a large project funded partially by industry, by INSERC, and we will be looking for a PhD student who has an interest in that interface between nutrition, production, and bird welfare. So if you know someone or are interested, please drop me an email. Thank you very much for listening to our little bit about our University of Saskatchewan Poultry Welfare Group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Karen, I don't know when you guys sleep. It's a very busy group. You've got a lot going on. So if anybody has any questions for Karen, I encourage you to put them in the question and answer period. Karen, I have a question. Just how do these topics come to you? You know, where do they come from?
That's a great question, Val. And before I answer it, I would really like to thank you guys for all the work you did on this amazing meeting. I can't imagine how you put it together that quickly. So thank you for that. The ideas, I do a lot of work with industry. I sit on a lot of welfare advisory boards all over North America. I do a lot of extension talks, with producers, with other groups and companies. Many of the ideas come through that way, I would say, probably most of them.
For sure. If anybody else has any questions for Karen, please put them forward. I'm really interested in the flicker work that you're going to do, and I'm glad you talked about, working with a company to help you adjust those different flicker levels, because that was a question that I had. Because now it's sort of a mistake when it happens in a commercial barn, and so then how do you replicate that? That's always
that was a huge thing to get those lights in our first idea of that study. We thought this won't be very difficult. It was difficult. So we've got it case now though, so we're good to go.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, with that, Karen, I think I'll say thank you for your presentation. It was good to hear all the great work that you guys are doing. And again, I'm always, you commented about us getting this done in a short amount of time, and you know this as well as I do. It's all about having a great team. So congratulations to you and your team. So with that, we'll move on to our next presentation. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Val.